Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Marketing Show. The Speaking Show. No, hang on, I'm sorry. The Selling Show. How many rebrands can you do in 10 seconds or less? Well, I don't know, but my next guest absolutely knows. Mr. Jim Heininger, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So your expertise is, and you and your firm, is in rebranding. So much so that you are rebrandingexperts.com. Tell us a little bit about your professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today, and how did you land on rebranding as your superpower?
Oh, thank you. I came with about 25 years in the big agency environment in Chicago, where I'm based. A lot in the strategic communications and the branding, change management, internal communications kind of work for clients. Some big brands, McDonald's, Wendy's, Anheuser-Busch, Motorola, and then actually took an assignment at McDonald's Corporation for a little while, went inside. And when I finished up and wanted to leave, they said, "We want you to be available to us. And so we'll give you some guaranteed business to open your own firm, so you don't go back into a big agency environment." Started doing that and got called upon to do a number of different rebranding assignments. And it was like, this is really interesting stuff, because it's not just naming and creative and brand identity. This is a major change that organizations need to go through to be able to do this correctly. And it needs that change management experience I had, and internal communications and leadership coaching and all those different things. So we sat back and put together a whole methodology behind how do you, from end to end, successfully rebrand an organization? What are all the best practices to apply in this? And then realize we need to spin this off as a separate agency that positions itself as the rebranding experts and does solely that work. And it's been about 8 years now, and have had an opportunity to work across industries. Everything from hospitality to travel to healthcare to senior care to construction, and with organizations of all different sizes, even some nonprofits, but, several that are in the $20 million revenue range up to $500 million revenue range. So it's a methodology that applies against all those different sizes and with all those different industries.
I want to talk about the difference between big company rebranding versus small to mid-market company rebranding, because we always hear about the big companies, and we almost always hear about the big companies' mistakes, right? So whether you're talking about the new Pepsi logo, whether you're talking about Kia, and people go, "Kia, is that like a K and an N? Why is that an N?" Folks, it's not an N, it's an I and an A in that crazy modern space futuristic type. And so Facebook becomes Meta, and all of these different kinds of things. The latest one, I guess, the latest big splash that people are all up in a furor is Jaguar, right? The Jaguar rebranding, and all the people are chiming in how horrible it is, and, decades of legacy being thrown down the toilet. So we know about the big company rebranding disasters. What do small and mid-sized companies get wrong about this? And share a couple horror stories or composite horror stories as you can recall them.
Interesting. Well, and I'll kind of even start off, because it's a good context for understanding what goes right and goes wrong, is what rebranding is, the way that we view it. So let's start from the the beginning, which is, what is your brand? And your brand, we believe, is that total collective set of aspects that determine how people perceive you and how they bump into your brand. So it's not just your name, your logo, your website, your marketing efforts. It's the experience that people have when they do business with you.
Yeah.
What do they remember and what brings them back to you because you delivered on a promise that you made to them? So that's kind of what we define a brand as. If you think about rebranding, that means to make a whole new brand that you're going to go to market with. So we hear a lot of different stories about companies that change their logos, a new color palette, and they might have a little bit of a new marketing message and or a website. We kind of categorize those as brand refreshes. And so that's when you do a visual makeover of your brand to make it more modern, more exciting, more appealing, and it gives you some new news to go out and share with your customers and attract attention. Those happen all the time. Pepsi changes its logo frequently, every 10 years or so. So refreshes happen a lot. Then you give repositioning, where there's something about your brand that needs to get back on course or get on a new course to be able to grow strategically and to capture market share in the way it wants. You see this a lot in the retail marketplace. So Victoria's Secret went through a big repositioning. Abercrombie and Fitch got themselves, very pigeonholed into, super athletic young teenagers and realized they could only sell so many products if they just dealt with that market. So they repositioned themselves to make themselves more interesting and available to a broader set of customers that were buying their products. A rebrand is when you do a refresh and a repositioning, but you change the whole brand up from top to bottom, the DNA of the brand, oftentimes including the name of the company or the organization. It's standing up an entirely new brand that is forward-facing, can lead you into the future, and can really open up new doors for you in terms of markets or customer sets. So that's how we kind of look at, how you would break down the different pieces that might go into a rebranding. Now, what do a lot of organizations the size of 20 to 500 million, what do they run into? First of all, their leadership has to be engaged in the process from the very beginning. And that's why I'm always pleased when we get a call and it's the CEO of the organization who says, I really feel like I need to do this. Help me better understand what's behind it and assess if this is the right step for me going forward for our organization. Those size businesses oftentimes don't have as big or robust of a marketing capability internally, or the agencies that they use don't have any experience in rebranding. And so the CEO's reaching out directly saying, I want you to work with our team, but they haven't been through this before themselves. And so they're going to need some hand-holding. They're going to need you to kind of help them understand what this rebranding thing is all about in order to be successful. So CEOs, leadership have got to be involved from the very beginning. Yeah. And our very first message to them is, this is the most unbelievable opportunity for you to reset your organization, to clean out baggage that you've collected over the years that you've been in business, and to really overcome the current status quo and define a whole new organization. Be aspirational. This is the chance to change things up in a dynamic new way and let your brand lead changes you want to make within your organization to improve operations, to improve customer service, to go after markets that you couldn't before because your brand was just dragging you down. It was an anchor, and now you're freed up, you're untethered, and you can go after these things in a dynamic new way. So those are kind of the two biggest things that we have to keep reminding these clients as you're at the center of this, CEO, and we want you to be really aspirational in terms of how this can help build your business.
I'm sure that being an insider in the branding, advertising, and rebranding world, you must go nuts when you look at a company, and maybe they're a prospect, maybe they're not, but you're thinking to yourself, they really, really need to rebrand. And then similarly, when a company goes through a rebrand and does not change or does not take the opportunity to change those foundational elements, your head must explode again with like, why did you bother? Why did you spend all that time, all that money, all that effort just to screw it up? So for the CEOs listening and for the professional services CEOs, founders listening, what are some of the DNA markers that their firm really needs to seriously consider a rebrand?
The very first question we'll ask is, why do you think you're doing this? What do you think you're going to achieve out of it? And the number one determinant tends to be that there's something about the current brand that is holding back growth, that its perceptions in the marketplace aren't allowing you to sell a product or a service that you have grown to be able to offer to your customers, because the brand doesn't fit that new service. It doesn't open doors for you to be able to sell that product or to go into a new geographic market, because there's something just outdated about it, or you've outgrown it in a way. And the outgrowing thing is a really huge dynamic. A lot of companies will say, we have grown, we've introduced new things, and that brand is sitting back there 20 years behind us and not doing us any favors. And that's what we need to address. That's what we need to change. And we go through an assessment where we'll ask, what are the revenue numbers of these new products or services, and did it meet your goals, and why specifically did it not meet your goals? What are you hearing from the front line? What are you hearing from those potential customers that you're trying to sell that aren't buying it? And let's see if that's brand related, so that we know that indeed is the brand that's holding you back. And then it's, your own people will tell you, your sales team will say, I'm banging my head against the doors and people aren't listening to me because they think our name is outdated. It's a name that doesn't aspirationally kind of convey the new promise that we want to be delivering to customers. So a lot of those different touch points that kind of really reflect there's something needs to be done with the brand.
Hold on. This one is so good, even I'm taking notes. Listen, are you a CEO, founder, or corporate executive ready to fix your market obscurity problem and gain the market eminence you and your company deserve? Cool. Book your private Market Eminence Roadmap call with me, and let's see what might be possible for you. The link is simple. doitmarketing.com/call. See you over there. Now, I got to get back to taking more notes. And then similarly, share with us some rebrands gone wrong, where some of those elements that you mentioned earlier were missing. So we didn't have executive buy-in. We didn't talk about change management. We didn't think that we needed to revamp our internal and external communications. Basically, let's keep doing what we're doing. New name, new logo, go time. What's wrong with that strategy?
Yeah, that's putting, as they like to say, lipstick on a pig. It's just a different color of makeup, and that's not going to change anything. It all starts with your promise to your customers. What is that promise, and how has it evolved, and how will it evolve? Where do you want strategically the organization to go, so that you design that new promise and then you build a brand around it to help deliver that. And that's where a lot of organizations, don't embrace it wholly enough, fully enough, deeply enough to be able to set themselves up for decades to come, because they were too cautious about it. We've just went through a rebranding with a financial services organization that it was a credit union that was wanting to be more financial institution to the markets that it served. It had a very bold, ambitious new strategic plan of products and services that they wanted to roll out, the role they wanted to play in the community, and so forth. And we were able to grasp onto that. The encouragement was always, to get leadership to embrace it the way the rebranding team is, and not think that they can go off and make decisions on their own that don't reflect all the decades of experience in rebranding and what it can do for the organization. So listen to the research, listen to the folks who have been on the front line to say, here are the kind of challenges you're going to face if you don't do it the right way.
Well, and you have a tremendous amount of thought leadership out there specific to rebranding, the do's and the don'ts, the questions to ask, kind of the consequences, the strategy behind it, the change management effort that's required, the communications campaigns that need to go out. I think a lot of people think this is a once and done, hey, let's spend 90 days on the rebrand and then we're out of the woods. What's the typical timeline from rebrand to fully reaping the benefits of the rebrand under this new identity?
So the rebranding process itself, from conceptualization and the starting of the research and the internal assessment to launch, the majority of the assignments we're working on now are about 9 months. And that's a very accelerated timeline because you need to conduct the research and fully understand how you're currently perceived, to understand if you were to put forth a new brand promise, how people are going to respond to it, and are they going to embrace it? How do you have to tinker it to get it in good shape? Before then, you can name your organization, create the whole new identity, and really align the organization to launch. So that's to launch. One of the biggest challenges, quite honestly, in rebranding these days is the renaming piece. So when you rename your organization, you need to go through a trademark approval process, and that's administered by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Yeah. So there's an organization that now takes about a year to review your application and even give you feedback on whether it looks like it can be accepted or if they believe that there are potential challenges to it. Nobody wants to wait a year. No CEO has got the patience to wait a year to know if they can go through with this whole rebranding exercise. So it really has forced us in the creative naming process to come up with final options for clients that are so dynamically creative and different that nobody's gone that route before. And that through trademark searches and Google searches and domain searches and everything else, we find it to be a white space. We find it to be a territory that no one else has gone, especially in your own industry, but maybe hopefully any industry, right, that nobody's used it. So that the trademark attorneys can say, I think I got 99% confidence that you're going to be able to get this approved by the USPTO, and that you can therefore move forward in your rebranding execution and launch, knowing in confidence that a year from now, when you finally get the notice from the USPTO, that it'll be an approval of what you've proposed. Yeah. There's a little bit of risk management involved in that because there's always a potential that something could be uncovered in a state or a local jurisdiction that may be a bit of a challenge to you, or you may have to slightly modify the domain that you would want to use because somebody's already grabbed that domain. So that's what is kind of the biggest time hurdle in this whole process, to be able to get to launch. Then when you launch, you need to spend the next year repeating over and over again why you rebranded, what the new brand is, what is the value to customers, what strategic growth opportunities it's presenting to your organization. And employees need to deliver on that message for a year to be able to instill the confidence among customers, among new prospects, that it's the right thing to do. So you're on a couple year runway when you go through a rebranding to do it right.
For sure. I'm going to ask you in a moment about some success stories and some not so success stories, but just based on what you shared, I'm curious, is there a scorecard, is a kind of post rebranding scorecard that a year from now, 18 months from now, we're going to look back and there's going to be a dashboard or some metrics or some things that are measurably better because of the rebranding?
And those measures need to be put in place before you do it, so that you've got a point of comparison, of how you're perceived and how people view you differently, or experience you differently as a result of the rebranding. So yes, report card is critically essential, and the commitment to doing the research to fully understand, did we make progress? you've got to build it into your budget. You got to build it into your thinking that that's going to be critical to do along the way to make this successful. And we'll do oftentimes we'll wrap up a project and we send anniversary reminders to clients 6 months after their rebranding or a year after their rebranding, to even just have a general discussion as to how is it going. Because one of the challenges that you face is that most people feel like when you you launch and you go to market and woo, it's great. And then they go back to doing business the way they did.
Yeah.
And employees kind of lose their enthusiasm and, it's we're the same old company and so forth. And you got to go back and remind them that no. This needs to be perceived differently in the marketplace. So we will do what we call a booster shot about a year out of going back and reminding employees, why did we conceive this brand that we did in the first place? What makes us different in the marketplace? What are customers saying about us differently that they didn't, in the past? What new opportunities are they giving us? You need to remain committed to this. You need a booster shot to be able to make sure that this is going to work in the way it needs to.
Yes, and amen. Tell us a couple of your favorite rebranding success stories and maybe one or two not so success stories of, clients or people that chose not to work with you and then went off and did it the wrong way.
So one of our favorite rebranding exercises that we've ever done is in the professional service industry. And it was a group called BPI. They specialized in the talent coaching, leadership coaching segment of the marketplace. BPI were the initials of the French founder of the organization. And the U.S. leadership team did a management buyout of the U.S. operations, and as part of that said, now we need to differentiate ourselves. We need to kind of change the name, but we want to change the name to be something that's more powerful in our industry and in terms of defining the outcome of the work that we do with clients.
Yes.
And actually, interesting, when we came in on the assignment, they had already had another agency who had come in and proposed some different things that they liked at the time. And we looked down and we said, we think you can do better. It's very tactical in the way it's talking about how you could differentiate yourself. We want to lean into the aspirational side of this. They put them in a better track, leadership performance, and collaboration to get them to a better performance, to a better, bolder future. And we said, okay, let's kind of keep working with that. So then what do we do with that? Well, we ignite our clients' ability to do that. So we wrapped our arms around this promise, which was igniting bold futures. And that really got them excited because they said, we can talk to our clients in that kind of language, and we can market that in a way that really positions us differently as opposed to what we do. It's what we create for you as client A, client B. So then we said, let's go into the naming process. We got our new brand promise, and now what is it? What are some names that convey that? And we had a lot of fun exploring words that were in that area of brave and courageous. And then we said, but we also want something that's very action-oriented as well. So in going through all these different options, we kind of had on the center of the table, brave and bravura, which is a way of conveying that courageousness. And then we had action words. And the one that we kept coming back to was avanti, which is an Italian expression to go forward, onward. And it was all of a sudden like, what if we put these together? And we coined our own name that was going to be free of kind of trademark challenges that gave us a unique story that we can tell. And that was to put brave and avanti into bravanti. And it was an entirely new way of naming themselves in this competitive set that they operated, which was a lot of organizations that had names of founders, just like they previously were with BPI. They embraced it and loved it and said, this brings so much energy to what we do. It sets off our story of igniting both futures, allows us to go talk to clients in a new way, to position ourselves to prospects in a new way. And then we created this bold identity that was bright, bold, kind of colors that were unexpected in their industry, pinks and oranges and bright blues and so forth. Created a logo of Bravanti that had an arrow going forward, that had all those different kind of colors worked into it and so forth. They spent a lot of time educating their employees on what do we do differently as Bravanti? How do we operate differently? How do we talk about ourselves differently? How do we sell ourselves differently? Got all that work done, took it to market in the middle of the pandemic when companies were facing so many different employee and leadership challenges in a way that the relevance of what they were doing was so spot on at that point in time. And one of the interesting outcomes of it that even took them by surprise was it opened up cross-selling. So they had several kind of different siloed businesses that they, services that they offered to clients. They were able to cross-sell those in a way that they had never anticipated and got such positive feedback from that it really got their whole business development process rolling in a very exciting way as well too. So that's a good story in terms of what rebranding can do for you, how it can work, especially in that service organization, especially in that kind of mid-size organization as well too. So we're especially proud of that one because it really brought together everything that you need to do to do a rebranding correctly.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there. Are there any, on the flip side of that, is there a horror story or just kind of a horror scenario that you want to warn us about?
So it tends, the disappointing stories that we tend to see is when clients come to, or organizations come to us and we walk through the whole process and we talk about what it's going to make to be successful, and they say, you know what, we're going to go a different route. And it's like, okay. And then we watch to see what route they go. So we kind of keep track of them. We kind of wait to see how long it takes them to rebrand because they all think that they want to do it, on the shorter time frame. We see, it's now taken them a year and a half. They still haven't done it. And they come out with such a marginal change. Or worse, they take whatever their name was and make it an acronym. So they suck the soul and the differentiating potential out of it. And it's now 3 letters. And they think it's richer, it's more modern, and it's more, and it's not. It becomes this kind of soulless letters that now they're going to go out and try to do because they think it's making it easier on their clients to just go by an abbreviation of their name as opposed to what it was. And there's no differentiation anymore.
Yes.
And those are the ones that were just like, we gave them the opportunity. We told them, how to do this, how to embrace it, how to make it differentiating. And they chose to, they thought they knew better and they went a different route. Let's wait and see if that works for them long term. I'm kind of doubting it does.
Yeah, no, to me, the 2 cardinal sins, especially in professional services where it's so prevalent, it's the 3 initials. So again, BPI, great example. The other one is the founder's name and associates. Jim Heininger and associates, David Newman and associates. Yeah. First of all, 9 times out of 10, if you have to say and associates, there probably are not any. It means you're a solo, single, shingle schmuck sitting out there waiting for the phone to ring.
Bullfrogging to make yourself look better.
Yeah. And it's such a wasted opportunity because the name, the brand, the instant set of images that come to your mind, even if you have a made up word, when I love Bravanti, you have something like that evokes emotion, that gets people thinking in a very dynamic sort of way. You might not know exactly what it means. You might not even speak Italian, but how much better is that than BPI?
Yeah.
JFK, PDQ, LVMH, right? I mean, even an LVMH obviously is an acronym for the big mothership, but it's the brands are Louis Vuitton and Moet Hennessy, and these names have legacy and luxury branding after hundreds and hundreds of years of investment. But you and I can't do that. You and I can't do what LVMH does because we don't have their history, legacy, or resources.
Or dollars. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, let's go behind the scenes a little bit. Before we turn on the microphones, I mentioned that you are a prolific podcast guest, and I so much appreciate you being here. I'm curious, is there a rebranding podcast that you're thinking of hosting?
I have not gone that route yet. It's interesting. I did listen in on a few podcasts that position themselves as rebranding, and what they're talking about is visual identity changes.
That's right.
They're design oriented. They're not business strategy oriented. Yeah. I probably should do it. Let's go in on one. What do you say?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share my playbook, and whatever worked over here, I'm happy to share with you. The next question that I always like to ask experts is, because you've written so prolifically on your website, blogs, Forbes, all of these amazing places, is there a book in your future, a book on the rebranding methodology?
That's more than likely to happen. There's only a couple books out there that we have read. And again, our view of what a rebranding is and how it can be a strategic growth accelerator for a company is a much broader view than what you see practiced by a lot of people. So these are design agency founders who write a book about rebranding. They're not talking about changing the promise. They're not talking about changing the employee experience and the customer experience as well. So you just gave me another job to do, David. I got to write a book.
Yes. Well, and then the final question, because we kind of have this whole market eminence model that we try and share with people, which is around speaking, publishing, and podcasting. Tell me about your speaking adventures, and for folks listening that may have a connection to a conference or a trade association, what kind of speaking venues would be a good fit for you?
We love to go into ones where there are especially there's certain industries that, because of the nature of the way people brand their companies or name their companies, they are ripe for this kind of strategic reinvention. So financial services is a big one. Professional services, obviously, you're seeing dental practices that are, they're getting consolidated into businesses as opposed to a sole doctor who used to run them. And now they're needing to brand themselves in a way that allows them to open up more, practices and in different, locales and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So it's always helpful to be in an industry where it's a lot of entrepreneurs that open businesses. They tended to make those kind of common mistakes, which is they didn't think aspirationally enough. They named it after themselves. They now need an exit strategy, and the brand isn't going to allow them to be able to get as much value out of their business when it comes time to sell or to pass it on than they thought it would.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, for example, Value Builder, a lot of these exit planning kinds of conferences and meetings, that would also be a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Well, I'm going to have two final questions for you as we're landing the plane. The final question is, where can people get connected and stay connected to more Jim Heininger brilliance? Before we get to that, though, if folks were to take one overarching idea from our entire conversation today, what do you hope that final big idea would be for people?
If your brand is holding you back, it's an anchor, if it's not the positive asset that you need it to be to support your strategic growth plans, consider rebranding. Look into it, understand what the strategy is behind it, what's involved in the execution of it and so forth, and make the evaluation. Is this something that we need to do to unleash the power of our company?
Yes. And based on what you shared, it can literally change everything. if
the
done
idea.
correctly. Yeah, amazing. So where can people go? What links should we put in the show notes for folks that want to get connected and stay connected to more Jim Heininger, more rebranding experts? What can we share with folks?
So rebrandingexperts.com is the website. You mentioned I do write for Forbes, 30, 40 stories that have been out there over the last several years on different aspects of the rebranding process. So you can find those on Forbes.com. And shoot me an email, jim@rebrandingexperts.com. We have an assessment on our website that you can sign up for, and we'll walk you through it to do that kind of initial examination. Is this the right kind of strategy I should consider? And always happy to do that with organizations, just to be able to educate them, so they understand the potential of it.
Of course, absolutely. And all of those resources and links will be directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Jim Heininger, it's been a delight. We could talk for hours, and that means we obviously have to have you back.
I'd love that.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.